What's up, everybody? It's been a long time since I've actually posted a video. Figured I'd reach out to my audience and kind of give you some updates on new trends and happenings in the mortgage and real estate world of things. If in case you didn't know, I had posted a while back that I am now both a Florida licensed real estate professional as well as a Florida licensed mortgage broker. So after 20 years of being in the mortgage and real estate industry, I decided, you know what, why not be able to help my clients out on both sides of the business and provide them with solutions when it comes to both buying, selling, refinancing, obtaining a mortgage, needing information about a home, and everything that has to do with it. So, in case you didn't know, now you know. Please help spread the good news with friends, family, your circle, people at church, people at work. If you know me, if you've worked with me, you know how I, pride myself in providing customers with the highest level of customer service. I pride myself in providing you with, the time that you need and helping educate you, providing you with the information that you need so that you can be a well-informed home buyer and well prepared in your journey toward home ownership. So if you've worked with me and you enjoyed your journey with me and you want to be able to have your friends, family members, and those that you've worked with or work with or know have a similar experience, please, if there's anything I can ask of you, is to please share this video, share my contact information with them, and my guarantee, my promise to you is that I will take good care of them just as well as I did with you. On a separate note, so, everybody's been asking me, what do I think? What are my thoughts on real estate? What do I think is going to happen in Florida? Are home prices going to come down? Are interest rates going to come down? Is affordability ever going to become a reality for them? The answer to both the first two questions is simple. I don't know. That's the God honest truth is I don't know. And you know what? The reality is nobody knows, because the good old saying is, if we all had a crystal ball, we would be able to give you the right answer. We wouldn't be having this conversation. If we would be able to tell the truth, the future, no one would have a need to ask that question. And the reality is nobody knows. Nobody knows of whether or not home values are actually going to sink. Nobody really knows of whether or not interest rates are going to go down. The truth here is that the best time to buy is now. That's the truth. The fact behind that truth is, if we were to go back 30 years, if you were to go back and look at your mom and dad's first home or your friend's first home that they probably bought 20, 30 years ago, and look forward to today, the market was just as bad, or whatever you want to consider this market to be today, then. But one thing holds truth. It's that real estate has gone up. And even though we've gone through our dips, even though we've gone through our ups, we've gone through our downs, one thing holds truth. Look at history. The history will prove to you that mom or dad that bought a house 20, 30 years ago, that house is definitely worth over $100,000 or more 30 years later. Okay? Yes, it may have dipped, but it definitely came back up. Does that make sense? And so with that being said is, when I say the time to buy is now, the truth is that regardless of what you think is, interest rates are too high or prices are too high, or the question you should be asking yourself, the question you should answer to yourself is this going to be a short-term or long-term investment? Because if the reality is that you're buying your home today to live in it for the next 15, 20, or 30 years, then what does it matter if whether or not the price is high? The prices are always going to be high. That's always been the excuse. That's always been the argument. Oh, the prices are too high. I remember starting in this business back in 2004 when, the average home price in Central Florida, was probably sitting at about, $180,000. The highest priced home that I can remember, that could be, there's always been $1 million home, but, in my general scope of business, $300,000 was a lot of money. Okay. And we fast forwarded to 20 years from now, 20 years from that. Sorry, I'm driving, guys. And when you think I'm looking at the camera, if I do put my head down like this, I'm actually looking straight ahead. My glasses give that illusion that I'm actually looking at you, but I'm actually looking at the road. Sorry, sidetrack there. But you look 30 years ahead, and I can remember people saying that $180,000 home or $200,000 home that was being sold in Ocala, which Ocala back then was a rural area, very rural. If you think Ocala is rural now, no, Ocala is a major city, maybe not considered a metropolitan city like Orlando or Miami or Jacksonville, but it is growing and it's becoming a major city. Long story short, 20, 30 years ago, $180,000 was a lot of money. Guess what? The average price in Ocala today, 30 years, has doubled. And people are still saying it's a lot of money, okay? Point of the story, guys, is that had you bought 30 years ago for long term, 30 years later, you'd have a nice little nest egg, right? Especially if you've taken good care of that home, especially if you're looking at resale, especially if you held it for maybe investment and it turned into like a rental property. Long story short, 30 years later, you look back and go, wow, it was definitely well worth the investment. So the question you'd ask yourself is this long term? Is it short term? Because if it is short term, then yeah, it holds truth that, maybe now is may it be, depending on your financial situation, a risky time to invest because, you're looking at maybe getting out in the next, 2-3 years, less than 5 years, and the return on your investment may or may not be there depending on the rate, depending on the purchase price, etc., depending on the amount of down payment, etc. But that's a different story for a different topic. The questions that most people are asking is it a good time to buy in Florida? My answer is yes. Are rates going to drop anytime soon? My answer is I don't know. And if anybody were to tell you anything different, make sure that they support their statement, their argument with facts. It's not just, oh yeah, rates are going to come down, or the good old saying, date the rate and marry the house, because you know what? Not all marriages end well, okay? And I pray and hope for all marriages to go well, but the reality is that good old saying, that's a sales pitch. And if you know me and you've worked with me over the last 20 years, my business is not built on transactions. My business is built on relationships. I think relationships last longer. You're not just a number. You are someone that I'm going to be following up with. I'm going to wish you a happy anniversary every year. I'm going to wish you a happy birthday every year. I'm going to follow up with you after closing for at least, the first year, 6, 7 times throughout the year. Because why? Because this is a relationship, not a transaction. And so, in short, at the end of the day, I'm not going to sit here and try to sell you on, rates are going to go down. I don't know what's going to happen with rates. From one day to another, there may be an invasion on another country, or there may be some kind of news come up on media where, something happened in Washington, or I don't know, and that may cause rates to dip, or that may cause rates to go up. What I do know is that now is the right time to get well informed. Now is the right time to connect with me, to reach out to me, pick my brain. I will support my arguments with facts. I can sit here and tell you that, based off of Florida, not from a macro, or better yet, a micro, topic, speaking in terms of, nationally, economically speaking. No, speaking from a Florida perspective, because that's where I'm licensed, that's where I practice, that's my backyard. I can do loans throughout the entire state. I can tell you, speaking from a state level, Florida is in a very good economic stance, a very good economic situation as of me stating this. Today's February 17, 2026 at approximately 2:37 p.m. to be exact. I can tell you that Florida is in a very good financial, economic, stable condition, enough to say that, our minimum wage has gone up over the last 5 years. Heck, over the last 30 years. I remember when Florida minimum wage was like $7 an hour. Going back to 20 years ago, when folks, who were buying $180,000, $200,000 homes were saying that it's very expensive. Well, if you were to look at that from a social economic perspective, making $7, $8, $9 an hour, yeah, relatively speaking, a $180,000 home was pretty darn expensive. But when you go fast forward to today, 2026, and the Florida minimum wage being no less than $15 an hour as of September of this year, the average, Amazon delivery driver is making $20 an hour. Okay, when you look at a $200,000, $300,000 home, it shouldn't be that expensive. Okay, and when you start asking yourself the question as to whether or not home prices are going to go down, and me saying I don't know, the reality is I don't think so. That's my personal opinion though. I don't think so. Because if you're making more money, okay, it's almost like saying, folks in New York or up north in some northern state making, on average $30 an hour minimum wage, $28 an hour minimum wage, and hoping for the, for property values to dip. It's unheard of. Okay. Could it happen? Sure. Do I think it'll happen, personally speaking? No, okay? Because in order for that to happen, that would mean that we would have to regress. That would mean that, your minimum wage would have to go down, and hence the cost of living would go down. Everything else would go down. So the way I approach it is it's adjustment. We all have to adjust. I remember going to Publix and going, oh my goodness, a dozen of eggs costing over $5. I remember going to the pump. Now that's a different story. That's more from a national level. But no matter what, every state charges different prices for gas, and going, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm paying almost $5 a gallon for gas. But you know what? The reality is that when you adjust to the cost of living based off the rate of pay, things start to look a little different. Okay, I remember when folks didn't want to pay more than $1,000 a month for a mortgage. That was back in like 2012. You remember that? Where, most folks were paying $700 or $800 in rent here in Florida. And when mortgage payments at 4.75%, which I think were great rates back in 2013, 2014 for an FHA loan back then, average home price was about $150,000 to $200,000. Most people didn't want to pay no more than, $1,200 a month. That used to be a lot of money. Do you remember that? Because I sure as heck do, right? So now, fast forward, granted, rates are just about the same. They're not as low. We haven't hit the fours yet, all right? I know everybody's waiting for that to happen. There's a lot of noise going on as to, rates actually dropping, whether or not they're going to go down. But, the reality is that I believe rates are in a healthy environment. Looking back to 2004, where the average rate was about 6.75%, 2007, 7%. I think even at a 5.99 today, a 5.875 today, that's pretty stable. That's pretty healthy coming from, where we were to where we're at. And, I get there's a lot of hopeful people that, are really hoping that, the rates may drop. And they could. I don't know. They could. But in short, it doesn't matter how low these rates are going to drop. If purchase prices are as high as they are today, you better get ready to be in the 2000s. That's where the monthly payment for the average home in Central Florida and or surrounding areas of different regions of Florida are at. $2,000 plus. So if you're paying $2,000 in rent, $2,500 in rent, why would you not want to pay the same for your mortgage? Okay, because they're only going to get more expensive. This is called adjusting. You're adjusting to that monthly payment. So all that to say, right? Is now a good time to buy? Absolutely. Is now a good time to have a conversation with a mortgage professional, real estate professional? Absolutely. What are you waiting for? What do you need to do next? Give me a call. 407-720-4636 is my direct line. And as you know, I haven't made one of these videos in a long time, and I may just end up making more. I mean, if you have a specific topic you'd like for me to maybe consider talking about, you can drop a comment down below. And if you have a question that you'd like for me to answer for you, you can go ahead and drop your question down below, and I'll be more than glad to maybe make this more of an informative video for you and for future and potential home buyers that are looking for information, looking to get educated, right? But is our prices going to go down? I don't know. But fact is that minimum wage just went up. So when you kind of look at that and on a balance, and you go, well, if minimum wage has gone up, and the cost of living is rising along with it. If I expect for prices to significantly dip, and when I say significantly dip, I'm not saying prices won't balance out. Yes, there may be a slight adjustment, but when we're starting to think like back in 2008, where there was like a greater than 20% adjustment on real estate and prices dipping, that came from a global there was a recession that was occurring throughout the world that impacted the country as a whole. We went through the Great Recession, right? And of 2008. So unless we're expecting something like that to happen, I mean, prices to go down slightly, maybe there would be an adjustment, just to kind of balance things out. But don't expect a 20 or 30% adjustment. I really don't think. I mean, I'm not a financial analyst, but looking at it from a mortgage perspective and just kind of based off of my experience and my knowledge, I don't expect that to happen. Not with minimum wage in Florida having gone up. Okay, the cost of living in Florida following that, I don't really see a significant decline. That's the first thing, right? The second thing is there's all this buzz about whether or not property taxes in Florida are going to be waived for primary homeowners, right? If that were to happen, guys, you better buckle up, because as a primary homeowner, Governor Ron DeSantis is proposing to put on the ballot. And as a matter of fact, I think he did. I don't know. Someone please research that and correct me if I'm wrong, but there's a proposal that's supposed to be going on the ballot this year, 2026, where Governor Ron DeSantis said, hey, folks, if you own your primary home, guess what? You won't have to pay property taxes on your home. We're talking thousands of dollars being saved as a primary homeowner, and not having to pay property taxes, which in essence would reduce your monthly payment, not necessarily reduce your purchase price. I'm sorry, I'm looking left and right here because I want to make sure I have to turn at this intersection. So of course, drive safe, folks. Drive safe. Don't do this at home. But this is how passionate I am about what I do. I want to provide you guys with facts. Not just me trying to sell you something, not just me trying to, give you information that's not supported or backed up by facts. I would highly recommend you go back, fact check me. If I'm right, give me a thumbs up. If I'm wrong, send me the information that shows the updated information for me to be able to, correct myself. But going back to Governor Ron DeSantis, if that budget proposal does get passed, which I think he only needs about 51%, if I'm not mistaken, of the vote in Florida. I mean, that's like half of the villages, if you come to think about it. It doesn't matter which way you swing, whether you're red or blue, if you are a homeowner and you're given the opportunity to vote for no taxes, at least here in Florida. I know that this was proposed in other states before, and a lot of states rejected it. And, it is what it is, but if in Florida this gets passed, guys, that's going to open the doors for people to want to buy. And the law of supply and demand, basic economics, proves that, hell, in Florida, we've seen this, where if there's scarcity, guess what happens with the price of a product? It goes up, right? And so at the end of the day, we know that because when we go through hurricane seasons here in Florida, and at the end of the day, we can't find water, but the one water that you can find, it's at the 7-Eleven costing almost 3 times the price it normally would, is because of demand. And so if at the end of the day this were to happen, my take is, again, my personal opinion is that prices might go up. There might be a slight balance there. Why? Because there'll be a huge demand. You as a home buyer who is sitting in the sidelines right now, who's waiting for prices to either stabilize or go down, are going to end up having to buy a little higher. But guess what? Your monthly payment might adjust to, if this actually passes, by the way, to a slightly lower monthly payment. Why? Because at the end of the day, you don't have to worry about taxes. Now, I know that there's a lot more that may come behind that as to, how will banks look at that? Will banks allow you to not have to escrow your taxes because Florida may have passed this law where you don't have to pay property taxes? There are a lot of unknowns. There are going to be a lot of questions that need to be answered if that time were to pass. But, all this to tell you that you need to get yourself educated, research, back it up, talk with professionals, whether they're financial professionals, whether they're mortgage professionals, real estate professionals who have mortgage experience or financial degree or experience that will be able to back up and support their arguments for you. At the end of the day, I always say, a well-informed buyer is going to make a well-informed decision when it comes to buying a home, okay? I hope that be you. What I would highly encourage you to do after watching this 21-minute video is, listen, number one, if you agree with what I'm saying or if you have any questions or anything like that, give me a thumbs up. Drop me a comment. I'd be more than glad for you to reach out to me or I can reach out to you. Send me a DM. If you're confused, if you're hearing things from coworkers, people at church, family, friend, everybody's giving you mixed information. Now you hear me giving you something else. Give me a call. I'll be more than glad to help guide you and point you in the right direction. And at the end of the day, the decision maker is going to be you. Only you are going to be the one who's going to be responsible for making that mortgage payment. So I would highly recommend that you get yourself educated. I would highly recommend that you get yourself the right information. And I would highly recommend that you work with a professional that will be able to provide you with facts, not just trying to sell you on product or trying to sell you on rate, okay, but facts. And that's where I come in. I know I can do that. I know I've done it, and I pride myself in that. So listen, thank you so much for your time. I know it's valuable. This is what I love doing, and I hope you found some value in this. Is this the right time to buy? Yes. Are rates going to go down? I don't know. Are prices going to go down? I don't know. What I do know is history has proven that even though we've gone through our valleys and our peaks and our valleys and our peaks, you can certainly look back. Look back to that first home your mom and dad bought. Look back to that first home your aunt and uncle, great aunt and uncle bought, whether it be 20, 30, 40 years ago, whether it be in Florida or outside of Florida. And I can almost guarantee you one thing, that no matter how many peaks or valleys that they went through, when the timing was right, that property value increased in price. And not only that, if you were to compare today's price to the price that they bought at maybe 20, 30, 40 years ago, it's definitely not worth the same. It's definitely probably worth more. So with that, you got to ask yourself, is this short term or is this long term? Okay. Am I going to, and this is not long term, am I going to live in it for 30 years? Because you don't have to. You could buy it, live in it for a year, 2 or 5, and then eventually realize, you know what? I'm going to rent this property out. I'm going to use it as an investment. I'm going to hold it and use it as investment, which is what a lot of savvy buyers, home buyers do. They buy and then they turn around and make it an investment property. If that's the case, then you know what? Definitely now is the time to consider buying. Don't wait. Buy now. If it's short term, then you have to ask yourself whether or not, the investment is worth, the return. Are you really going to, make your money back in a short period of time. So long versus short term hold is going to be the question you want to ask yourself. If it's a long term hold, then you definitely want to go on ahead and consider buying now, because now is the time. Not tomorrow, not next week, not next month, not a year from now. Now, a year from now, you're going to wish you made the choice today. So that's my 2 cents today. Roberto Irizarry, Florida licensed real estate and mortgage professional. I'm here for you. Been doing this for over 20 years. I absolutely love what I do. And no nonsense kind of guy. Give me a shout, 407-720-4636. I'll be more than glad to help guide you, and I'd be more than glad to help get you into a home. I'm going to be, I just got to a community, new construction. I'm going to be dropping a video here soon, so be on the lookout for that. Some nice townhomes in the Altamont area, Apopka borderline area. Well priced, great incentives. I think you guys are going to love it. Watch my video, share, like, drop a comment, and I hope to speak with you soon. Take care. Thanks. Bye-bye.